The movie begins with Jason, a regular young man who's talking via Skype with his friend Craig. Craig is going on a trip for a few days and needs Jason to receive a package of pills for him. He even offers Jason part of the profits if he helps sell the ecstasy. At first, Jason isn't interested because he wants nothing to do with his friend's dirty dealings, but his girlfriend has been asking him to try new things. So after a while, he agrees to Craig's proposal. Meanwhile, downtown, his father John is doing his best to keep his trucking company afloat. The business has been losing customers over the years, and he has many employees who depend on him. Despite the difficulties, John doesn't let that affect the work environment and actually helps his employees whenever he can. There, he meets Daniel, the newest hire, who seems very happy to have gotten the job since he's trying to set his life straight after getting out of prison. That same afternoon, Jason receives Craig's package. Everything seems fine until he decides to open the package to see the pills and discovers there's a tracking chip inside. The police are now pounding on his door. Within seconds, several DEA agents surround the house, and although the young man tries to escape through the backyard, he is caught a few minutes later and arrested for buying narcotics with intent to distribute. A few hours later, John is spending time with his new family when he gets a call from Sylvie, his ex-wife, telling him Jason has been arrested. When he arrives at the station, Sylvie is extremely distressed because she hasn't been allowed to see her son, and they've been treating him like an animal. John promises to fix everything and goes inside, but after a few minutes, he can't do much either, so they have to wait. Later, when they finally get to speak with a detective, he informs them that both Craig and Jason have been arrested, and that given the quantity of pills in their possession, they'll be tried as adults and could spend up to 10 years in prison. To make things worse, since Craig was arrested first, he agreed to a deal with the DEA and pinned all the blame on Jason, pushing Jason's potential sentence up to 15 years. Because of the overwhelming evidence against him, Jason's only option to avoid prosecution is to cooperate like Craig and give up another trafficker he knows. However, the young man is stubborn and refuses to betray his friends. Even after John forces him to face the reality of the situation, the boy won't give in, so he is transferred to juvenile detention until sentencing. A few days later, the next morning, John uses all his contacts to secure a meeting with the prosecutor in charge of Jason's case. But she repeats what the detective said. Under the new drug law, either Jason informs on someone else or he gets sentenced. 3 days have passed since Jason was incarcerated, and when he's finally allowed visitors, his father sees the dark side of prison on his son's face. He's been brutally beaten. After Jason tearfully confesses his mistakes, he breaks down in front of his father, who orders him not to show weakness to the other inmates and promises he'll do whatever it takes to get him out of there. That same night, John tries to arrest some traffickers himself in a dangerous part of the city, but receives a brutal beating. Fortunately, the police show up to save his life. Once he's released, the prosecutor requests to see him again, and upon realizing how determined he is and that he doesn't plan to give up, she agrees to let John help them catch someone else in exchange for Jason's freedom. Now he just has to find someone experienced in drugs to help him with this mission. Since the trucking company is part of a Second Chances program, where they hire ex-cons to reintegrate into society, John checks his employees' records and finds Daniel. He meets with Daniel, intending to propose a partnership. Daniel will have to secure the drug contacts, and John will handle transporting them in his trucks. He also offers Daniel a $10,000 advance payment. However, Daniel's had enough of that world. He spent the last 5 years in prison and now wants to do right by his wife and son. So he turns down the offer and tells John to find someone else. John, not willing to lose his only chance to save Jason, doubles the advance payment before Daniel walks away. That night, when Daniel returns home, he finds his son hanging out with local traffickers, making him realize that he needs to improve his life, and fast, to keep his son away from all that trouble. So he decides to accept John's proposal and tells him he'll bring him to meet his old partner, Malik, who is the biggest distributor in that area, and the only one who could move enough product to justify using one of John's trucks. During their meeting, Malik tests John to see if he's a cop, and once John passes, Malik explains how to hide the drugs in the trucks. Malik acknowledges that John knows his business, so he decides to give them a chance, but Daniel must accompany him because Daniel is trustworthy. Now that John has a solid lead, he reports back to the prosecutor and manages to impress her. She assigns Agent Cooper to assist John with the deal and promises that if they arrest Malik with the drugs, Jason's sentence will be reduced to 6 months. The day of the transport arrives. Using one of his trucks, John and Daniel head to the Texas border to pick up the drugs. On the way, Agent Cooper listens in on their entire conversation, while Daniel has no idea he's working with the DEA. When they reach the spot, they're surprised to see it's a junkyard, and some heavily armed men welcome them. In just a few minutes, the men hide 10 kilograms of cocaine in 2 bags of cement, and John tucks them away nicely among other construction materials in the truck. Suddenly, a shootout erupts. Members of a rival cartel appear and begin firing at everyone in sight. The protagonists manage to escape, and although the truck sustains some damage, the product remains intact. That night, Malik's associate calls him to congratulate him on his new driver, who turned out to be braver and more efficient than expected. A few hours later, John returns with the product and is ready to lead Malik into the trap organized by Agent Cooper, who waits with his team at a nearby location. At the meeting spot, Malik tells John that he impressed his associate with his driving skills and that this associate wants to meet him. When Cooper hears this, he cancels the trap and lets Malik leave with the drugs. The next day, John is furious and confronts the prosecutor about why she let Malik escape with the drugs. She explains they need to catch Malik's associate as well, so he must continue with the plan. Because of John's odd behavior, Daniel becomes suspicious and follows him to the meeting, discovering the truth. Daniel then warns him that the cartel will come for them, and the best thing he can do is take his family and run. When John returns home, he finds Malik there with all his henchmen. They've come to take him to meet Malik's supplier, a man they call El Topo. El Topo tells John that he's now part of the organization, and since they still can't locate Daniel, John must make the next run alone. But he shouldn't worry because El Topo will be nearby to keep watch. That same day, John visits the prosecutor because he fears for his son's life, but she's already taken steps and transferred Jason to an isolated cell for his protection. John then mentions El Topo's name, and both she and Cooper are shocked. Cooper says this man is the leader of Mexico's largest cartel, and if he wants trucks, it's likely he's not transporting drugs, but money. Hundreds of millions of dollars that could be a big blow to drug trafficking if they can catch him. Knowing what he's up against, John tells them that if he helps, they must free Jason immediately and remove any mark on his record. Afterward, Cooper warns him that cartels don't keep their mules around for long. They always end up dead once the job is done, and that once he crosses into Mexico, Cooper won't be able to help him due to jurisdiction issues. When the day of the delivery arrives, John doesn't trust the DEA to protect them, and the situation escalates. So halfway through, he switches trucks and abandons the one being tracked. He's also managed to find Daniel, and they team up to save their families from Malik and the cartel. A few hours later, John arrives at the rendezvous point, and they load the money into the truck. Then they order him to drive to the border and wait for instructions. Sticking to the plan, and because Daniel knows the habits of Malik's men, specifically when they step out to eat, he attacks the ones who remain and manages to kill them one by one. There, he faces off against Malik, kills him, but is wounded in the process. Right afterward, he takes Malik's phone and sends John El Topo's number. Back on the road, the cartel has learned John is an informant and tries to stop the truck and take back the money. While fleeing from the cartel cars, John calls Cooper and gives him El Topo's number so they can trace him, as he must be close by, keeping an eye on the truck. Using a shotgun, John manages to keep the cartel's cars at bay for a few minutes, but in the exchange of gunfire, he's wounded in the leg. Using the number, Cooper tracks down El Topo and places him under arrest. However, more cartel cars keep arriving on the highway, and John's life is increasingly in danger. With half of the truck's tires blown out by gunfire, John can no longer control the vehicle, and it overturns in the middle of the highway. Just then, DEA agents finally show up and scare off the cartel members, saving John from certain death. With Malik dead and El Topo behind bars, the prosecutor wastes no time taking credit for the operation and announces her candidacy for the Senate. The next day, Daniel is called in to give his statement, but Cooper tells him it won't be necessary. The real reason for his summons is to receive his share of the reward for capturing El Topo. Now Daniel has enough money to give his family a fresh start in a nice place, far from the dangerous streets where he grew up. That afternoon, Jason is released, and John can finally reunite with his son and give life a second chance.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.